My goal is not to just be a good father. My goal is not to just be a good husband or a good son, a good brother. My goal is to be whatever is necessary for that current situation.
Welcome to the Dynamic Man podcast. By now, I'm hoping you've seen the first couple episodes, at least the trailer. And I think it's important to note what I believe that the dynamic man is and what it means to be dynamic. You might have seen the trailer, and it's a lot of dichotomies and dualities that I believe are more objective than subjective. When we talk about humans and we talk about each other, we talk about people, I find it best to be objective instead of subjective. That eliminates the entire narrative of, oh, this person's a good man, this person's a bad man, or I have a good husband or a bad husband. I had a good father or a bad father. I really want to strip away the emotions here and look objectively, because there's no right answer. I think anybody that tells you that they know the right answer about your life and how to be as a person, I think they're full of crap, because at that point, it's very subjective and it's a judgment to label someone good or bad, right? And I think I've had conversations like this in the past where I don't want to say things are good or bad. I think I had a big post on the Broken Instruments, the Instagram, and shit happens to all people. If a person falls off a cliff, it doesn't matter if they're good or bad. They're going to hit the ground. So it helped me understand and to strip away the subjective nature that we have and to give our opinion and to look objectively at it. So my goal isn't to be a good father. It is not to be a good husband. If someone judges that to be later on, and I've had people tell me that they see me as that, like, I mean, obviously that feeds my ego, but I got to check it right away, because my goal is not just to be a good father. My goal is not to be a good husband or a good son, a good brother. My goal is to be whatever is necessary for that current situation. Every situation, a part of me has to be adjusted or altered specifically for that. The last video I had, it talked a lot about ambition and loyalty, where we have goals, we have dreams, we have this desire to accomplish things in life. But there's also this element of us that has to stay loyal to who we are, stay loyal to the people that raised us, stay loyal to the people that depend on us. You can have personal ambition, you can have goals. But I think what I got to in that video was create collective goals as a family. That one sole goal of our entire family, of our entire being, of everybody that's in my life. And if you account for both of those, it's not about, accomplishing things or not. It's how do we benefit from this? Who is affected by this? The next one is rigid and reliable. And for me, this is actually one of the most critical parts as far as how I interact with family and friends. When I talk about rigidity, it's not being stubborn. I believe that there are boundaries that we have to set as individuals, that there's certain boundaries that I know I will not cross. There are things that I would not jeopardize, and I have rules and hard lines when it comes to certain things. And with that, I consider things like family values, family principles, and morals. At work, it's ethics, with faith. These are things that I have to be rigid on. So I believe a dynamic man has to be rigid on certain things, but reliable to show up for situations and those individuals that need us. When I have hard lines and rules, am I willing to come up to that line of rigidity in order to be reliable for those that matter, for those that care about me, for those that need me? Where, if it's work, if it's something you have to do at home versus something like a party for a friend or a loved one, and you're kind of in the middle of that. Now, take note, every duality and dichotomy that I bring up here in Dynamic Man, it's not either or, right? There's a spectrum between the two. So here's ambition and here's loyalty. Where do you lie on that spectrum between ambition and loyalty? Here's rigid and reliable. Where do you lie in this given situation? What part of you? How reliable can you be? And how rigid can you be? And find that middle ground there. The best part about that is there's no right answer. There's no good answer. It's really in every moment, are you able to adjust under these circumstances, under these conditions? How rigid can you be and how reliable can you be and still be you, sticking true to who you are, right? The next one is proud and present. Proud and having pride is something we all need. We need to be proud of who we are. We need to be proud of our accomplishments because that it inspires us to continue to move forward and accomplish more and to give more to the world, to share more. But that's a double-edged sword where you go too prideful and then now your ego is the sole driver for you. And that's also not healthy. So to check that, we use presence. In this given moment, all the accomplishments that I've had in the past don't exist right now. In the present moment, the best thing that I can say that exists right now is I am breathing, that I have a home to live in, I have a roof over my head, I have clothes to wear. I have a family that's here with me. In this present moment, I can have trophies, I can have licenses, all this money that I accomplish, or making amazing feats, and have pride in that. But remember, in the present moment, that's already done. It doesn't exist today. I when I talk to my students, I tell them when you step into the patient's room and you say, "Oh, good morning, I'm your nurse," and they go, "Oh, get the F out of here, man. I don't want to talk to you." You can't say, "Well, you know what? I got my RN license, and I passed my NCLEX on the first try. I have a 4.0 GPA." In that moment, it doesn't matter. It doesn't exist in that moment, in that interaction with the client. Dealing with that confrontation, you can't justify your previous achievements. It doesn't help the situation at all. So it's proud and present as the dichotomy, the duality. Where do you lie on that spectrum? How proud can you be and still remain present? The next one is relentless and respectful. Relentless, if you haven't read the book Relentless by Tim S. Grover, that's probably one of the most critical books, and I would say one of the most essential books for anybody that wants to accomplish things in life. And I have my take on it. I think there's, if you read the book, you'll understand what I'm saying, but the cleaner is supposedly the highest achiever, the ultimate competitor. I believe, and some of my friends know this, I made 2 more ranks above the cleaner that I believe are more important. And that might be on another podcast or something, but relentless, meaning unstoppable, meaning unrelenting, that when you're set on your goal for success, it's all in, balls to the wall. You're going to do whatever it takes to accomplish that goal, but also staying respectful for who's on the path in front of you, who's on the path next to you. We got to play that game of how relentless can I be, but also respect those that have been before me, have gone before me, those that are in my path, those who I'm supporting on the path, and those who are with me. If you read Relentless, there's a lot of dark mentalities and a lot of perspectives that challenge you as a person. And I mean, in regards to relationships, in regards to family. And I'm completely, I've dove in to that mentality so much. There's this dark side to all of us that can be lit up and help accomplish things get actual results and in success, whatever metric of success you use. But I find that it gets disrespectful to a certain point, especially when it comes to family, which is why I made 2 rankings above the cleaner. And again, I might have a podcast episode about that. The next one is peaceful and powerful. Now, these aren't necessarily dichotomies, but people feel like you can't have both. That power, when I say power, you have this automatic picture of what power looks like. And again, that's preconceived. We based on what we've seen, what we've experienced in life. When I think of power, I have a certain way of thinking of what it is, good and bad. It's very subjective at that point. But remember, remove subjectivity out of this and let's look objectively at it. Power can be very calm. Power can be deep within, and it's controlled. It's tamed. A lot of people, when you hear power, we think of tyranny. We think of dictatorship, authority, right? Power and peace almost seem like opposites, but peace can be very powerful. So, I mean, in essence, what is peace to you? People imagine, if I say peace and you just visualize a calm ocean, a serene ocean, someone meditating, calming music, the beach, the park, Zen, vigil, church. These are things that we consider peaceful. But sometimes peace, internal peace, is sitting in chaos and still finding who you are, still finding your center, the center of who you are. Now, where do you lie with peace and power? Can you reconcile the two? I mean, I believe peace and power are not two sides of a coin. I think peace and power make up the edge around the coin. And whatever coin it is, heads or tails, any duality, peace and power can exist together, and they are pretty much one if you really look at it objectively. Peace and power can be internal, and it's very subtle. Faith, belief. In the present moment, I can be ambitious and loyal. I can be rigid. I can be reliable, proud and present, relentless and respectful. And finding that is what I call the process of being dynamic. Again, it's not a subjective thing. Let's remove our emotions out of this. If I said, I want to be a good father, whatever you pictured can't be. At that point, it's emotional imagination. Now, can we craft strategies to produce healthy relationships? Can we craft strategies to produce healthy results in life, in family, work? Of course. Now, what it really does take is for you to understand where your ego lies in all this. If anything, your ability to make decisions is critical. And I received a question from Instagram, and I'm grateful. Again, I'm grateful for all these questions. But I'll get to the question. I'll kind of dissect it a little bit, but also give my 2 cents on how to tackle making difficult decisions. So let's start here. Question. Hey bro, I noticed that you mentioned you don't work on the floor anymore as a nurse. If you don't mind, why did you end up leaving the floor? I've been in LVN for a little over 6 years, and I'm on the fence about going back to school. Is it still worth it to get a degree or the RN license? First of all, thank you for the question. I am off the floor. I currently teach in nursing education. Um, it was a very difficult decision to pull myself off the floor, and I don't want to just say like, yeah, it's good, like you should go for it or not. But I really want to give you some insight, I guess, on why I left. I I mean, I've been a nurse since 2012, right? So I think it's important to note that we as nurses want to be aware of trends. We want to be aware of especially negative trends that are happening. And think about right now, like you working on the floor, in a couple years from now, things are going to be different. You want to anticipate where that's going. And when I was on the floor, I started noticing some negative trends. A lot of, I would say, a lot of bad situations happened, and it made me realize how no matter how hard I came in on the floor, no matter the perspective or the mindset that I had, you are a member of a team. And an RN is just the member of the team. And the team is just as strong as I mean, people say like the weakest link, but I don't like saying that with healthcare. I usually say the team is just as strong as the person who cares the least. And things have happened in the past that I felt like no matter how hard I worked, no matter the perspective that I brought every day, people still suffer at the hands of the entire team. And there was a couple situations that I feel like really nudged me off the floor. On top of all that, the time that I was potentially, I mean, I was exploring leaving the floor, I started teaching part-time, started dabbling in teaching. Realistically, I was saving up for a ring at the time, and I started working part-time at an LVN school. The issue with that was my shift was a clinical rotation. At that time, I was working basically every weekend over the two jobs, and I started dabbling in teaching. So, I mean, honestly, I found a path in education. Even when I worked at the hospital that I worked for, it's a teaching hospital. So we would precept, and we would have BSN students shadow us. And another thing that I started realizing, I started seeing from those BSN students was this decline and decompensation in good communication with healthcare providers. And with that and the issues that I dealt with on the floor, I started realizing that, I, for one, I love what I do, but I didn't feel as effective as I could be. I started seeing these trends, and I found myself being almost ineffective or not as effective as I wanted to be. So I made this hard decision to leave the floor and to go teaching full time. I honestly, I miss the floor sometimes, and then I think of the hard days, I think of the bad days, but I love what I do now. Now, like I said, a lot of things played into that decision, not just those negative things, but I started asking myself, am I happy where I'm at? And it's not all about happiness, right? I fully believe, you've been an LVN for 6 years. I fully believe that consistent work, no matter what job it is, if you work at it and you give it your all, and it provides enough for you, that's as fulfilling as accomplishing anything else further than that. So I would say if you love your job right now, and if you find a passion, you find something that lights you up with it every day, I don't see the point. Now, do you think it's worth it to get a degree in RN license? I mean, a lot of things play into that, like financial stuff. Of course. I mean, if it would increase your salary, things like that, yeah, I would probably assume that getting a degree or an RN license is a little bit more than your current job as an LVN. So there's a lot of things that weigh the scales on this, right? So I can't give you a full answer, but as far as why I ended up leaving the floor, it's because I wanted to make a bigger impact. When I was on the floor, I was that type of nurse that came in with this relentless mindset of, things are going to be better because I'm here. The team is better because I'm here. Be the difference kind of thing. But like I said, it only got me to a certain point because there are so many other members of the team that affect the care that we provide. So, in essence, I felt limited in that capacity. And I mean, I found myself loving relaying my experience and knowledge to these aspiring nurses. So, when I went full time as instructing, I ended up getting my master's degree in nursing education. And I it's what I do now. What I felt like was missing, especially with the new wave of nurses coming through, and I bring this up every term with at work with my students, is that schools nowadays are pumping out hundreds of nurses, hundreds of RNs a day, or hundreds of nurses per year, and I started seeing a decline in quality and commitment. I mean, who am I to talk, man? I freaking left, right? I left the floor, but um, not a lot of nurses are in it for the right reasons anymore. Because they've made the decision to get their RN because of money, because of, I mean, they want to buy and accomplish their dreams financially. So there's no knock to that, but we have to be aware that when you elevate your skill set, when you elevate in your career, the work that you're going to be called to do is a lot more. So that's another thing that you have to factor in. No decision is easy, especially if it's with work, especially if it's with family. Any big decision financially, you really have to get into this place of comfort when you make the decision. So I call it the 5 essentials for difficult decisions. And these 5 things I felt like helped me decide. Now, it wasn't defined obviously before, but I finally was able to write it down and construct some sort of questionnaire for myself that I feel like it's finally packaged enough to share with people. But it's the 5 essentials for difficult decisions. And the first thing starts with energy. The question is it worth my energy to think about this, to explore a new avenue? Is it worth my energy to add on top of everything that I have to do now to consider leaving all this for another thing? And this pertains to a hard decision about school, work, financial decisions, family. The question is it worth your energy to even consider making that change? And the second one is ego. And I would say the first 2 here, ego and energy, they're almost like the gatekeepers when it comes to anything I decide. Is it worth my energy? And is this to serve my ego? Am I doing this? Am I considering this out of ego? So when I'm thinking about making a change or making a decision or changing my avenue, my path, the question is why? What's the purpose of changing this path? Path. What's the purpose of changing the? What's the purpose of making the change? Right. A lot of times we operate out of ego, where you said you've been working as an LVN, and your ego is partly challenged when people tell you, "Oh, you don't want to get your RN," or why haven't you considered getting furthering yourself in your career? So your ego plays a big role in that. And especially nowadays, people are talking about, getting degrees, high degrees, advanced learning, graduate school, and I've said it in previous podcasts in the past where I've accomplished everything that I believed I wanted to at that time. And not to say that it didn't matter, but I realized that partly for that, it was out of ego. Yes, it provided me more finances. Yes, it helped me save up for whatever we had to do as a family. But yeah, I'll admit part of it was ego, because you feel like you want to get the credentials. You want to have those alphabet letters after your name. Now, strip away all the ego. Is it still worth it? Right? Is it worth your energy still? So those are the first 2 things. You really have to ask yourself, is this worth my energy? Number 2 is this serving my ego? once you check your ego and the answer is it's not solely for ego, then we move on to the next one. The third one is empathy. Who will directly be affected by this decision? How will this affect those that depend on me? When we talk about empathy, and empathy is being thrown around all the time now, it's not just feeling bad for someone, right? That's sympathy. Empathy is understanding where someone is, understanding and doing your best to understand their perspective, their thoughts, and their feelings. And it's not fully like, hey, I'm trying to feel it with you. Working on the floor, especially in mental health, we take empathy as one of our greatest skills as a nurse, because we don't have to directly go through what the patient's going through to say that we understand. There's times when I don't understand what people are dealing with. But if you tell them, I'm trying to understand where you're coming from, I can't imagine what it's like to go through that, that is expressing your empathy for them. Like, you don't have to be in someone else's shoes to try and understand how it would feel. The greatest way I can explain empathy versus sympathy is if you saw someone walking on sharp rocks and they were barefooted. Sympathy would be, oh man, I feel bad for you, dude. I feel bad for this person. Let me buy them shoes. Here's some shoes. It's a beautiful, nice gesture. But that's sympathy. Empathy is a lot simpler, and I think it's more human. It's more innate. It's more intuitive. When I see that person walking barefooted on sharp rocks, empathy would be, that has to hurt. If I were in that position, that has to hurt. That must be painful to do, right? Empathy, it almost feels like you don't have to do anything. Now, it can launch you to do something. It can inspire you to do something for someone else. But empathy is trying to understand where people are and how others are affected by life. So with empathy, you want to ask yourself, who will be affected directly by the decision I make? It could be family. It could be the place of work. It could be your friend. It could be your coworker. You factor that in now. You factor how, if it would affect them negatively. Considering all that, is the answer still yes? Go for it? Or is the answer, it would affect them too much? It would affect my kids too much. It would affect my wife or my spouse too much. Then the answer is no. Because I don't want them to be affected to that extent, right? Number 4, I call it end of the world. And that's basically considering the worst case scenario. Let's say you quit your job. You jump into RN school. You're going for the degree, and RN school is not easy. Worst case scenario, you fail. So now you're jobless. You don't have your finances in order anymore, and you're no longer in school. Now, is it worth it? So end of the world would be, are you willing to risk it, considering the worst case scenario? And that leads me to the 5th one, the final one. The final one is embrace. Am I willing to embrace the results, good or bad, positive or negative? Am I willing to own it? Right? So basically, no matter what the outcome is, no matter what the end result is it something you're willing to live with? And the answer could still be yes at this point, where yes, it was worth trying. It was worth doing my best for. It was worth fighting for. And no matter what, if you've gone through each of these 5 essentials, the 5 E's for difficult decisions, and the answer is yes to each of the 5, then make that decision, right? Because at that point, you know it's worth your energy. You know it's not out of your ego. It's given you the ability to empathize and to express empathy to those that depend on you, that you love. you've considered the worst case scenario, and at the end, you're willing to live with the end result. So, is it worth your energy? Is this to serve your ego? Who will directly be affected by your decision? Consider the end of the world, the worst case scenario, and are you willing to embrace it? Now, whatever you decide from here on out, obviously, people ask my opinion all the time, especially at work. At the end of the day, you're the one that's making the decision. You're the one that's going to have to live with whatever result happens. Now, it could be completely amazing for you, but only you know what's best for you. Only you know what's best for your family. Only you know the answer. I can give you my perspective. I can give you my opinion on it. Help you with strategies how to come up with that answer. But these 5 essentials have not steered me wrong, even to this day.